When we see couples, we often assume that they are in a happy and healthy relationship based on their smiles and social media posts. But you never really know what's going on behind those smiles. Today, we look at a case from Lakewood, Washington, of a soldier who killed his wife. October 16, 2014 was the day of homecoming for Skylar Nemetz, an infantry soldier, and his wife Danielle. But instead of being the happy day it was supposed to be, it ended up becoming a tragedy. Danielle Nemetz was born prematurely on July 11, 1995. She was a flyer on her cheerleading squad and was described by her teammates as bubbly, full of life, and friendly. Danielle had a rough childhood. Her mother passed away when she was barely a toddler, and so she and her siblings were raised by their grandmother. Danielle's grandmother passed away when Danielle was 14 years old, so she was forced to move in with her stepfather, who also neglected her. According to Danielle's loved ones, she was constantly looking for the tight family bond she was deprived of growing up. Her quote said, "She also got very close with the families of the boyfriends she had because they were the most stable part of her life." In October 2012, Danielle was a junior in high school when she first met Skylar Nemetz. Skylar graduated high school and enlisted in the Army. He was due to begin basic training in Georgia. The two became friends on Facebook and met in person at a high school football game where Danielle was cheerleading. They became smitten and eventually started a serious relationship. Danielle was in love with Skylar and was telling her friends that Skylar was the guy she was going to marry. This didn't surprise anyone, as she often said the same thing of her previous boyfriends. But even for her standards, the relationship was moving fast. After just a month of dating, Danielle moved in with Skylar at his mother's house. Skylar's mother remembered having some reservations about this, but she eventually agreed. 3 months into their relationship, after returning from his boot camp, Skylar took Danielle to the top of Neelan Mountain and proposed to her. Danielle accepted, and 3 months later, on the day Skylar graduated from boot camp, the two got married. Within weeks, Danielle left school and they had relocated to Lakewood, Washington, where Skylar was stationed in Fort Lewis. Danielle eventually came into her own in Washington. She enrolled at a local school to complete her high school degree before taking a job at a granite countertop company. She spent her leisure time at home taking care of her new puppy and creating online makeup tutorials. Skylar's new Army job required him to be away from home frequently, but when he was in town, Skylar and Danielle would frequently spend time together at shooting ranges. Skylar had grown up around guns and had a collection of them in the house he shared with Danielle. Danielle grew interested in weapons as well, and Skylar gave her a blue AR-15 rifle for her 19th birthday. From the onset, the couple seemed perfectly happy, but those close to Danielle knew differently. One of Danielle's close friends noted that she had had her reservations about Skylar from the start. She said that whenever Danielle brought him around, Skylar did not engage in conversations or make any attempt to get to know anyone in her life. She also recalled that during her regular FaceTime calls with Danielle always seemed to be stressed about getting the house in order for Skylar. Another friend had noted that Danielle began wearing long sleeves all the time, presumably to cover up the bruises she had as a result of the continuous domestic violence she endured from Skylar. Danielle told James Peltier, her former neighbor and a father figure, that Skylar had once broken her iPhone in rage and then went on to get her a new one. After that conversation, James became quite concerned. He asked whether she was frightened of Skylar, to which she said, "Only when he's been drinking." There were countless additional instances of Skylar's behavior towards Danielle that concerned Danielle's loved ones. Skylar, it seemed, was convinced that Danielle was cheating on him with her childhood friend, Jeremy, and openly accused her of this often. Skylar was assigned to Yakima for battlefield training in late September 2014. Since there was no drinking allowed during training, he texted Danielle a few days before he returned, asking her to purchase him a bottle of Fireball and Sailor Jerry's to enjoy when he returned home. Danielle and Skylar were both under the age of 21 at the time, so Danielle knew she'd have to rely on someone older to buy the alcohol. Danielle wanted to make sure her husband got what he wanted, so she asked 2 guys to buy the alcohol instead. One of the guys was Jeremy, the guy Skylar had accused Danielle of cheating with. On October 16, 2014, Skylar returned from Yakima. According to him, he and Danielle were overjoyed to see each other. He also said that they celebrated by ordering pizza and drinking Fireball with Red Bull. Skylar insisted that he was not drunk, but rather buzzing. Danielle FaceTimed her best friend Michaela Yingling shortly after Skylar returned home. According to Michaela, Danielle appeared relieved that Skylar was back home. Michaela also saw Skylar during their FaceTime call, and she said that he appeared to be in a good mood as well. However, just 12 minutes after she hung up the phone, several neighbors called 911 and reported a gunshot. Danielle was dead. Skylar told neighbors that Danielle had accidentally shot herself while cleaning her AR-15 rifle. He didn't let anyone see Danielle and refused to speak to the 911 operator. When police arrived at the scene, they found Danielle in the spare room of the couple's apartment, sitting at her computer with a pool of blood beneath her chair. She was shot at close range, behind her head, and was pronounced dead at the scene. The police put Skylar in the patrol car and noted that he was making sobbing sounds. He continuously cried and called out for Danielle. Since the police knew Skylar had shot Danielle, as there was no one else in the house, police asked Skylar what had happened that afternoon. In a 5-hour-long interview, Skylar changed stories multiple times, and it appeared as if the longer he spoke, the more holes appeared in his story. According to him, Danielle asked him to clean and store her AR-15 gun as she sat down at her computer to work. Danielle was facing Skylar when he raised the rifle and fired. He said he didn't know the gun was loaded. Instead of calling the cops, Skylar concealed all of their firearms in a cupboard and dumped the bottles of Fireball and Sailor Jerry's down the balcony. Skylar also appeared to have made no attempt to help Danielle by calling an ambulance. When asked why he did this, he simply said, "Because I knew she was dead." After hours of interviews along with some other witness accounts, Skylar Nemetz was arrested and charged with the murder of Danielle Nemetz. Skylar's trial began a year and a half after shooting his wife, and he pleaded not guilty. The prosecution claimed Skylar was a jealous and domineering husband. They showed the jury the abusive text messages Skylar sent to Danielle. They also highlighted that it appeared quite odd that Skylar would accidentally set off a rifle, especially given he always described himself as knowledgeable about gun safety. The prosecution brought Anthony Foss, one of Skylar and Danielle's mutual friends, to testify. Anthony recalled Skylar's rage when he discovered Danielle had asked Jeremy to buy the alcohol. Anthony's testimony was important in propelling the prosecution's case. According to the prosecution, Skylar shot Danielle in a rage after realizing that Danielle had not been truthful about how she got the alcohol. While Michaela stated that Skylar appeared to be in a good mood when she saw him on FaceTime with Danielle, the prosecution argued that this was an act. He probably waited for Danielle to hang up the phone before acting. Skylar's defense team maintained that Danielle's death was an accident. They called witnesses, who ultimately contradicted Anthony's testimony. Skylar and Anthony's mutual army friend stated he did not see Anthony on the base at the time Anthony claimed to have the alcohol conversation with Skylar. Skylar testified as well, denying ever speaking to Anthony that day. After both sides were finished presenting their arguments, it was up for the jury to decide. Following 7 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Skylar Nemetz was found guilty of manslaughter, but cleared of first-degree murder. The jury did not believe that Skylar had intended to kill his wife. Skylar was sentenced to 13 years in prison for killing his wife. He will be free by 2029. Skylar left the courtroom saying, "I'm sorry to everybody here. Most of all, I'm sorry to Danielle. I'm sorry that she was ripped out from this world, and I'm sorry to her friends and family, and I accept any punishment that you give me." This case serves as a chilling reminder to always check up on your friends and be careful who